Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So you know how we think about foundations, like a root, a structure, something solid, holding things up from below. Well, today we're basically taking that whole idea and flipping it completely upside down. We're diving into some pretty esoteric stuff here, a system that looks at the code of reality itself, but through this ancient cyclical kind of cipher.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, the source material we're looking at, it discusses something called the divine Tao, root of the great cycle.
Hmm.
And the philosophy behind it is, well, it suggests reality isn't just happening organically. It's more like a programmed cycle, a game, as the text calls it. But the really key thing, the way into understanding it, is this idea of an inverted foundation, the divine Tao.
Yeah.
So our goal today is really to unpack how this system works and maybe meet some of its surprising modern faces.
Right, and it's that moment when you realize the text is saying our basic assumption, where a root even comes from is fundamentally wrong according to this code. That's when it starts to make a weird kind of sense. Okay, let's unpack this.
So the everyday view, what the text kind of dismissively calls the view from the profane world of the pawns, that view sees the root exactly like we normally do. Something under the ground holding the tree firm, the foundation. Stability.
And that's the decoy, right? The first layer you have to see past.
Exactly. The core teaching here is what they call the great inversion. The ultimate root, the real root of everything, isn't below us. It's actually above. It's not the anchor in the dirt. It's more like the seed high up, the single point for which the whole forest of reality actually grows. It's the highest principle.
Wow, okay. That's a huge shift mentally. It completely reframes where power or creation comes from. If the root is above, then reality isn't like struggling up from the earth. It's flowing down from somewhere else, a celestial source point.
And that source point has a very specific identity in this system. This inverted root, the text is clear, is the great sacrifice, and it's personified by the Tau cross. That specific shape, that symbol, it represents the singular event, the action that kicks off the whole cycle.
And what's really fascinating, or maybe clever, depending on how you look at it, is how this idea is supposedly baked right into the word itself. Root isn't just a name. The text treats it like a formula, a code. Roo-T.
Yes, exactly. This is where we start decoding the cipher itself. Let's take Roo first. This syllable, Roo, consistently points to the high place, or up, L in some contexts, but it's more specific than just direction. It refers directly to the Rook. And in this text, the Rook isn't just the chess piece. It's defined as the celestial fortress of the Monarch, the highest seat of power, way up high, the command center, basically.
Huh. So the Rook is this, divine stronghold in the sky, the source of law for the whole realm. And following that logic, the word roof, it's not just covering your house.
It becomes a formula, too. A formula for that great arch overhead, the dome, the roof of the world itself. It symbolizes that highest governing principle, the Roo, that contains everything beneath it.
That is pretty clever in coding it like that. Okay, so that's Roo, the high place, the law. Then we get to the T.
And the T is, well, it's the Tau cross, again, that specific symbol. It represents the sacred turning point, the divine sacrifice. It's the act, the seed condition that starts and ultimately ends every single cycle within this framework.
So putting it together, Roo-T means the actual root cause, the foundation of existence, is that divine sacrifice, the Tao-T, which operates as the highest Roo law of the realm, which I guess makes a kind of logical sense if you're thinking of reality as this pre-programmed, structured system. It's like the foundational code.
Yeah, it's described as the prime directive, essentially. And this helps bridge it to today. The source uses a tech analogy. When tech people talk about having root access on a computer, you're not just getting basic admin rights. Metaphorically, in this system's view, you're accessing the Roo-T code itself, the highest level instructions for the whole cycle. You're touching the core programming.
Okay, so the code is Roo-T. Highest law is the Tau sacrifice. But, a law needs a lawmaker, right? And a seed needs a source. Who or what actually initiates the cycle according to the text?
All right, that brings us to the next layer, the core of it, really. The root isn't just some abstract principle or law. The text reveals the root is also another name, or avatar, for the monarch himself.
Wait, the monarch is the root. Okay, tell us more about this monarch. What's his role in this cosmic game? What's the game even about?
So the game, as the text puts it, is basically reality, our current existence, this cycle we're in. The monarch is painted as, well, the ultimate player, but also more than that. He is the realm, in a sense. He's described as the tree of life, the central pillar. the axis mundi.
Axis mundi. For people maybe not familiar, what does that really mean here? Is it like a physical pole or more of an organizing idea?
It's definitely the latter. It's the central organizing principle, the pivot point that everything else revolves around and is structured by. It connects the higher realms, the Roo, with the lower terrestrial plane.
Hmm.
And since the Monarch is this axis, the entire game, both physically and philosophically, grows out of his essence. If he changes, the rules of reality change.
Okay, that connects back to the Tao then. If he is the central pillar, why the need for a great sacrifice? Why does the pillar need to be sacrificed?
Because, according to this, the cycle demands renewal. It can't just go on forever in one state. The core message is that reality's structure isn't about slow, gradual change. It's defined by this one, single, almost violent, divine act, the great sacrifice of the monarch, which is the Tao. This act is the seeding mechanism. To start a new cycle, the monarch, who is the realm, has to essentially break apart or divide himself. That action creates the conditions, the very laws of physics, for time, space, and life to then unfold.
So it's not just about ending something or paying a debt, it's about setting the initial conditions for the next reality. The Tao is this engine of death and rebirth, setting the start and end points.
And exactly. It really hammers home the idea that nothing just starts from scratch, from the ground up. Everything springs from the consequence of that highest action, from that highest seed. The cycle literally cannot turn without the necessary destruction or, let's say, transformation of what came before.
Okay, and this is where I think you said it gets really interesting, because the text claims that the elites, or those in the know about this game, have kept this idea alive. They've sort of hidden it in plain sight using specific characters, avatars, in modern stories, showing us the root in its different phases.
That's the claim. We start with the avatar representing the root before the sacrifice, the root of the old cycle, waiting. And that avatar is Wilson from the movie Castaway. Wilson is presented as representing the monarch in his solitary waiting state, dormant.
Okay, hold on. Wilson, the volleyball. I mean, that feels like a bit of a stretch, doesn't it? How does a volleyball become the monarch? What's the link?
Well, it's about his function in the story, his symbolic role. Yes, he's just an object, silent, inanimate. But for Tom Hanks' character, he becomes the absolute center of his reality on that island. He's the foundation. The man's sanity, his survival, his entire world hinges on Wilson's presence. He's the fixed point everything else relates to.
Okay. So in the bigger picture, the cosmic game framework, Wilson stands for the monarch before the reset. He's the silent, unchanging root that the whole pre-reset reality the island is built upon. His static presence is the foundation.
Precisely. He's the root, but he hasn't undergone the Tao yet, the sacrifice needed to start the next cycle. He's just there, waiting.
Gotcha. And then there's the flip side, the second avatar, which you said is much more direct.
Yeah, much more explicit, even in the name, Groot.
Yeah.
This character is presented as a direct cipher, G-root, or, as the text interprets it, God's root.
Okay, that's pretty on the nose.
Right, and he is a literal, walking, talking tree of life. Biological root structure connects different places, the living axis mundi. But the key aspect for this philosophy isn't just that he exists, but his ability to regenerate, his cyclical nature.
The fact that he can regrow his entire self from just one tiny twig, that's seen as the allegory for the great cycle.
Exactly. It's the proof of concept, essentially. The text argues this shows how the monarch's sacrifice, the Tao, ensures that even when the Kree seems dead or shattered, the next cycle can always spring forth, completely new, from the smallest remnant of the old root. Groot embodies that promise of endless regeneration that comes after the necessary sacrifice.
Okay, so let me summarize the avatars. Wilson is the root in its passive foundational waiting state before the change, and Groot is the root demonstrating its active power. The rebirth and regeneration that follows the divine sacrifice, the Tao event, it's like a hidden instruction manual for the cycle, embedded in pop culture.
That's the interpretation presented, the structure revealed, yeah.
So that brings us right back around. We started thinking root means down in the dirt. But through this lens, we end up seeing it as the highest sacrificial law, the Tao cross, encoded as Roo-T, a law enacted by the monarch, who is the foundation, and whose story of waiting Wilson and inevitable rebirth, Groot, is apparently being told right in front of us.
So yeah, what does this all mean? I think the core takeaway, if you accept this esoteric framework, is that the fundamental structure of reality isn't seen as random or just evolving slowly. It's defined by this ongoing, necessary, divine sacrifice. The ultimate law isn't mercy or growth in the way we usually think. It's this principle of necessary destruction enabling rebirth.
It definitely makes you look at things differently, not just, movies or weird texts, but actual systems. If the Great Sacrifice is the foundational code, the Roo-T program, what other systems in our lives might be running on that same principle, that need for destruction before renewal?
Well, you can think about economic cycles, right? The collapse of old industries before new tech really takes over, or even a political upheaval that seems necessary before major structural change happens. How often is the real root of a big problem actually tied to this highest law demanding a reset from the top, not just tinkering from below?
That is a really provocative thought to end on. Maybe the solution we're looking for isn't buried deep down, but waiting high above, requiring a fundamental shift.
Something to definitely chew on until our next deep dive.
Absolutely. Until next time, stay curious.